Yeah, unfortunately, was it last month when we did the finale for, because that was when we did the library. Apparently none of the audio recorded. So it was just
man.
flat blank. I was like, you've got to be
That's
kidding me.
definitely not good.
Yeah. So,
Hello.
welcome. And so it was one of those, you had to be there in person to enjoy it. So.
Okay.
Set up a lot of streams, have you?
Yeah, honestly what it was the output format was only set to record channel 1, and I had isolated the channels so they wouldn't get bled onto one, but it didn't propagate, so it was just recording one channel and not the rest.
No.
Yeah. I guess we'll give it a few more minutes, maybe like 3 or 4. Let me double check here too. There is a, let me see if I can pull this up. I know some of you guys have seen this before. That 2020 survey, if you guys don't mind filling it out, that is a horrible link, isn't it?
That is a very
That is-
nice long link.
Yeah, that is a terrible link. Ugh.
I mean, if you put it up on Discord, it'll be easier to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me do that real quick.
Because otherwise, I mean, my eyes aren't what they used to be, and it's a long day. So.
I looked at the meetup page. If there were, if you post these links on there, I'll see it and I can click on stuff.
Yeah, let me.
What's that dot GL? I see 2-letter codes.
Google Forms. Let me see. I'll post the links in here.
When you make that link, there's an option box to make the link shorter. I don't know why
Yeah.
it's not already shorter, but
I'll post it in there. Oh, the power of technology. I don't have Discord on this guy.
Of all the 50 icons you have on that one
I know,
monitor,
you'd think.
technology isn't quite there yet.
Yeah.
Another week or so.
Let me see. I might actually be able just to shorten that real quick.
I'm waiting for the day when we get to have the Tony Stark layout. Transparent screens, 30 of them right in front of you, and be able to move stuff where you want it. Then I'll be happy.
That is the shortened URL.
I know, I was thinking it was probably.
Jeez.
Let's see, was it Minority Report that had all those transparent screens first?
Yeah,
A few years-
the
several years
big
before?
kind of curved one, and you could like move things with your hands, whatever. Yeah, but I think the way they did Iron Man just it looks perfect. Like if I could just have a home assistant I can talk to, knows all my stuff. Hey, can you pull up this information? Can you pull up this server? Can you run these calculations? Yeah, sure. Give me 1
I've never been a
minute.
fan of talking to my computer. They've been trying to sell that voice activated stuff for years.
Yeah, that's true, but it's never been accurate. So it's like Xbox.
Even it is.
It's been like
Because
that.
I'm talking in the office as it is. We don't need the people to go open file,
Yeah. I mean that's true.
Damn it, Ted! Just open the file.
Open the file.
Yeah.
You mean close documents? Open this file. Oh, empty recycle bin?
I've already turned off most of the little shiny. I don't need a startling alert just because
It's like-
something happened.
Like Xbox start game. Browse web? Yeah, that's exactly what I said.
That's fine for like a TV where you can just,
Yeah.
if you don't know what channel ESPN 7 is on, you just tell it. It's like,
Yeah, exactly.
So I get that, especially with remote control with 50,000 buttons on it. It's like, all right, well,
Yeah.
just tell what station you want. Preset and stack. So that would be good, that, these things that programming, I don't always speak to it, especially when you have to, I'd rather just hit a button instead of saying it's a colon.
True, sometimes it is easier to hit a button than it is to go through the whole
Right.
saying it thing.
I thought you just read your mind, that's fine. Strap on.
It needs to stay out of my head. Stay out of my head. Last thing I need is some weird thing I'm thinking of to pop up on my mind. Like, whoa, get.
You have the AI that reads your thoughts. And
It
it
just
says,
reads
"Are
your
you
thoughts."
Sure?
Yeah.
You want to.
Ask me before you actually display it, please.
It's like, do you want to say that what you're thinking? that there was Star Trek Voyager, there was some sort of brain-computer interface where you just
Yeah.
think about where you want to fly to, or whatever, and it goes there.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'd say let's go ahead and just get started. So.
It said 8 people, I think that included you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes it's hard to find a list of art. There's a lot.
That
That's what I was
was.
thinking. I know that they had changed some things as well.
Parking was definitely fun.
Yeah. Oh,
It's crap, it's like, well, people were, there's that window where people were leaving, from the class, was, people coming into the next class.
Do that. There we go. Hopefully this will be better now. All right, sweet. Oh, you kidding me?
Still doing it.
There we
Hi
go.
everyone, I'm Derek.
Hey, Derek.
Hi Derek.
Do you all know each other, or am I the only?
I don't know anyone here except for him, so.
Oh, okay.
You're new?
Sorry? This is my first one, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And actually,
Well,
Seth
people.
Moats said yes on the meetup.
Okay.
And he was supposed to be here this time, but he's going to be running late.
Oh, he's gonna be banned then
Okay.
for this
Life.
one forward.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Collab.
No, it's
Let's not
totally
let him
fine.
know till he gets here, though, right?
Yeah, yeah.
He's gonna
Be like,
bring.
"Oh, you're Seth, cool."
He's
Yeah.
gonna bring the food next time.
You've been doing that, coming here for a few months, right?
A few, yeah. I didn't go attending the summer ones, so it's just, I miss it. I'm right to miss it.
That's cool.
Know people, but some people are familiar.
Yep.
And the older guy with the hat, is
I say you've been here once before though, right?
Oh, was that the
the library one?
other
No.
one? No, the centric one.
Oh.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
No, I was gonna go into the other one, but it was like 5-part series, and I missed the first 4 parts. So I'm like, I'll hop on the next one. So.
Yeah, which those are all posted on YouTube, but unfortunately, as I was saying before too, the very last one audio did not record, so the 5th one is a mystery if you can find it.
Is the tornado one up in its full glory?
Luckily the audio cue points were great to edit because it was just silence and then these really sharp. I was like, cool, cut there. Oh, this is when we're back. So, but that is up there. Cool. All right, we'll get started then. I'll leave this up there. I'll post it in Discord. Unfortunately, I don't have it linked. For those of you guys that are new, this is the KC Unreal Devs meetup. We usually try to meet once a month, the last Tuesday of the month, specifically to talk about game development, careers in game development, using game technology. So I will say that we are sponsored by Epic. What that means is that I have access to resources to be able to do this. This is all completely volunteer, free. You guys don't get free keys or anything like that. I know, bummer.
You said you are sponsored by Epic?
Yes. Yep. So in particular, what I try to cover is at least talking about game development topics. Outside of it, it's not saying that I'm pro or against any other engine, but I will tell you that I'm definitely pro for Unreal Engine because the hat that I wear here today is I actually own a studio here in Kansas City, Bad Rhino Games, and we are an Unreal Engine developer shop. So I do have experience with it. I do love it. I have used Unity, CryEngine, Lumberyard, a bunch of different things. So I can speak to examples of why one is better than the other. But anyways, just to know that particularly what we're going to be talking about tonight is Unreal. Welcome.
Hi, so I got lost.
Hey, see.
Someone's like, hey, go this way, and I went all the way around. So.
No worries. So I'm going to leave this up here. For those of you that I know some of you guys were here, we just wrapped up a 5-part series and doing kind of a project configurator. So now we are kind of in free flow mode. So there's just going to be a couple topics. I think what we're going to discuss today should be a lot of fun. I'll dive into that in a second. Like I said, I'll post this on our Discord. If you guys aren't a part of Discord, the link is down there. Also on Twitter is followed at KC Unreal Devs. And you should try to post there for things going on. This 2020 survey, if you guys don't mind filling that out, that'd be awesome. That is simply just, I think it's like a 5-part questionnaire. Really what it's designed is for me to gauge where you guys are at, the kind of resources you want to see, the kind of topics that you would want to see covered. So if you get a chance to do that, that would be awesome. All right, cool. So for each meetup, I usually try to kick it off with a good question. So this is in relation to one particular game very recently. But the question is, if a developer expresses their frustrations with customers over social media, are they in the right to speak their mind, or should they remain quiet? It's an open question. What do you guys think?
Well, that's
Things got some padding.
Yeah.
Wasn't that just a discussion just like last week? Somebody just opened a rant and rave about, I don't even remember what it was.
We actually, last time we talked about loot boxes.
Yeah, that's one that.
So we're talking about like the developer goes on social media and talks about the problem they're having with customers in front of the customers.
Kind of. More so along the lines of if customers are expressing frustrations,
Okay.
or maybe just, for lack of politically correct terms, bitching
Yeah.
on the internet. As a developer, so you yourself or speaking as a
Retaliate
developer,
in a way, but-
do they have the right to speak their mind?
Yeah,
Yes.
I think they do. Professionally, because they're gonna still represent their company in a way, unless they do it anonymously. But
Yeah.
professionally, they should be able to be like, look, man, I know you're frustrated. We're trying to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Like at least, I mean, I wouldn't say try to completely put out the fire, but give them points of, hey, we're looking into this, you know. We understand your outrage and we are working on fixes, and we're not just, you know, seeing your post and, oh, you know, put it in trash or whatever, so. But yeah.
Okay, so what if customers are just absolutely berating, saying that the developers are idiots?
Those
or
are the ones
stupid?
You will always have those.
Those you ignore those.
I think honestly that you can make literally, even though there's no definition of a perfect game, you could make the perfect game, and there would still be a community of, well, this doesn't work right, or this is trash, this is trash. You need to take it from both sides, the goods and the bads, and honestly, the people, especially the people that are playtesting, I'd follow their word more than the people that are probably on there just to troll you and try to get you to, you know, make changes that no one else wants.
Okay. What about?
I think that's the same thing in the industry, whether it's a game or any kind of engineering, you know.
Yeah.
I don't think companies want their engineers to be talking to the customers, you know, let the company, if it's a company, let
Let the
them.
PR do it.
Yeah, you know,
So what if customers, gamers attack you personally on social media because they know you're a developer?
I would honestly probably delete my personal account and stick with, you know, if you won't have any questions, contact the PR department. And, you know, I would have to shut mine down and probably recreate one that they don't know about. Because I've seen some devs hop off of Twitter because they're getting personally attacked. And I'm like, that's honestly good for them to get out of there because the anger's misdirected.
I think that's any celebrity, you know.
And then,
music,
yeah,
you know,
yeah. I guess if it's
music,
also
you know.
celebrity based, but I don't even care about that kind of thing. So, but yeah, as far as developers go, you know, point to the right people.
Okay. What do you guys think about the flip side when a developer does express their frustrations, but the community retaliates against them for just kind of speaking their mind? To understand where this question is coming from, this is actually from Respawn with Apex Legends. So,
I was trying to figure out.
developer got on and basically kind of in a tactful way called them asshats and, you know, freeloaders.
I heard about that.
And so it has since caused a huge outrage. The gaming community has gone, the Apex Legends community has said, hey, we're going to boycott the game.
Yeah.
A mass strike, don't play it and stuff. So that's where those questions kind of
Yeah,
going from.
as well of the game launches they had too. I mean,
Oh, that's debatable.
well,
Paid for day launch.
yeah, as well as it seems like it went out.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Honestly, in my personal opinion would be, again, if you're on the developer side of it, and whether you have personal skills or not, let the PR team handle it, let the marketing team handle it, let the CEO, the legal team all handle that, and you work on making the game as good as you can possibly do. And yeah.
So safest bet is to say just speak your own mind
So
about
if
your
you
own
need
stuff.
if you need to go scream into a pillow, but don't scream at the customer, because I mean they're basically your bread. So
Yeah. Drew brought up a good point. He's on Twitch right now. Brought up a good point too with what about if you're a small studio, an indie studio, and you are the PR team, the maintenance team, and the developer.
Well, I mean, you can always handle it like in a professional manner, but put them on the spot. But you always have that split where you'll get respect from people like, yeah, we are kind of assholes, or you'll get the others that are just like, boycott it, look at them.
that is true. But then again, if they are complaining about something in particular about your game, say, hey, we are working on this. This is what
We've
we're.
heard
This
your
we
feedback.
have.
Thank
This is
you.
what we appreciate your
Those
feedback.
companies
If you
want-
have any ways to improve the service instead of just telling us what's wrong with it, then we can see about going that way. But if they're just on there, you guys are crap. You're a crap studio. Bye. Okay. Well, there's no actionable content there, so.
Mhm.
Most companies want feedback, even negative. They want to know what's wrong.
True, yeah, but that's also kind of feeding the internet trolls and.
I say when you say, I think it's an indie developer too. If you let the internet, it's like, hey, if you have any suggestions, 10,000 emails later, oh wow, we've got a lot of suggestions.
We got a lot of suggestions.
Yeah.
And I would say just, if you're a developer, it's the same. The customer's always right. Well, whatever their opinion is their opinion.
It's their opinion, yeah.
Improve the
But,
product.
I mean, you also got to stay true to what you want your game to be.
Can't please
Get
everybody. It's like the politicians.
You can't please everybody. Get the core of the game in, and then look at features later. Look at added, cosmetics and bells and whistles later.
Yeah.
So, I feel like I'm talking a lot, you guys.
That's good. You can run the meetup now. That's fine. with me.
I mean,
Yeah, I'm just
I've
kidding.
run stuff before, but I'll let you handle
I'm just
this.
kidding.
Before the social media, there wasn't that kind of communication with the customers.
Yeah, I was like, you got to call up support. Yeah, this doesn't work, and then hang up the phone if you even got through to support.
Or you can find a way to really talk to other customers of the product.
Or-
Just you and
true.
them, and you call for help.
Get on their .aol.com and hopefully
So it's
hope they answer.
take not made this possible. They said beg for surveys. Give us your feedback. Fill that out.
Yeah.
customer card.
I do remember that. Yeah, like thanks for playing our game. By the way, go to this website. How did you like it? Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
I just wrote a letter. I used to write Nintendo a letter all the time.
Really?
Hello, I like Mario.
I'm sure they probably got about half, or probably a couple billion of those. Hey, I like Mario. Keep doing this. So.
Those are the ones you want.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, a
Yeah.
handwritten letter from
Hey,
Susie.
I'm sure
we
it's
got
pinned
another
up
good
somewhere.
one.
Yeah.
Put that in the good pile. Well,
Yeah.
what room do we put it in? Because they're all piles.
Yeah.
But yeah, good times.
Cool. Okay, sweet. Well, so we'll kind of keep moving on then. So, good discussions. I'll just leave these up there. These are just some resources. So if you guys are working with Unreal Engine, you got questions about what to do, where to go, those are some great resources that have a lot of information on there, which if you use Unreal Engine, you probably know about those. A couple events coming up. I'll let you guys know. PAX West and TwitchCon kind of in the next month. Really good events to go to. If you guys are planning on going and flying out, TwitchCon's a lot of fun. PAX West is really good for kind of showcasing games and doing stuff like that. So it's a really cool one. All right, so continuing through this year. So what we're going to cover today, it was kind of a last minute change up on my part, but essentially just designing a level from scratch. So that's launching the engine, how to quickly block it out, how to populate it, how to light it, and how to get it ready to go. So regardless if you're a programmer or artist, there should be a lot of good information on this one for you. And then of course you can see my absolute cop-out for September, October, November is to be determined because I still haven't determined yet what we're going to talk about. Part of that will be if you guys do fill out that survey, that'll help me know.
Yeah.
I know we do have what appears to be more largely entry level kind of with game development. So I'll try to do some things that are a little bit more simplified, but still applicable if you're more advanced or intermediate to advanced.
I got an idea. About a 6-month course, game start, completion, and shipped.
Yeah, yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah.
No, I think that would be great, and we can talk offline. My concern would be if we get traction and
no.
people actually stay up with
Yeah,
it. But
exactly.
We can do that. So, all right, cool. So the agenda for tonight, kind of part 1 and part 2. Part 1 will just be the block out and the fundamentals. So just really quickly getting things set up, how to best kind of prioritize your layout, then to assembly, and then in part 2, this is where I actually go through finalizing it, testing it, and pushing everything through that. So, like I said, it should be pretty good. If there's any point we need to take a break or something, I'm sure you guys know bathroom drinking fountains just outside this door. So if you guys need those, feel free to pop out. So, cool.
I see, I'll interrupt
Yes.
maybe one time. You had a break and discussion at the end. Do you want us to ask questions as you go or say?
Yeah, absolutely. If you guys have questions while we're going, feel free to jump in. I'm estimating this probably should take about 45 minutes to an hour at most to get through everything. But yeah, if you guys have questions or if you're not tracking with something, just interrupt me. It's fine. It's very informal. You guys are right here. But okay, cool. So I will go ahead then and let's start with, are you guys familiar with the Unreal Launcher?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So for this one, I'm just using 4.22.3. And pretty much the process, if you just click run, it'll pop up here. No, I don't want Steam VR.
Steam will help you out. Here's the
It always
VR
does.
portion.
Yeah. So from here, I'll just go in and just do a new project, blueprint. The cool part about these, if you aren't familiar with some of these templates, they're really nice. All the core stuff is still there. So there's nothing to say that, if you grab virtual reality or vehicle, you'd be missing core stuff. All the core features of the engine are in there. However, what they do is they load some preset templates for you, so you have everything good to go. For this one, I just did a third-person template, just so we can see our character running around, and I'll show you guys what the level looks like here in a minute. But that is essentially the process that I did to just set up the project. Now, one question that I get quite a bit too, are you guys familiar with the differences between a from source and a marketplace build of the engine? Yes, no?
Not exactly.
Okay. If you're using the launcher, so this guy, to actually do your project, you're using a marketplace build, which means that the engine, when you click, if you remember, let me see if I can go back to it. I always love how it auto minimizes. But if you notice in here, how I have my engine versions, so all these exist on my hard drive, and they are the self-contained engine, but with Marketplace, they can run multiple projects, can use the same core engine. But with this engine, you don't really have the source level access to it. So you can do some side inject of like C++ code, which is great, but that is a very lightweight. One of the things that's advantageous for using the marketplace build is that, say for example, on your machine you can run 422, you can run 422, you can, so you guys can download it independently, and we share just a single project. You can open it, so on and so forth. So it's great from that aspect. However, there are times where you need more functionality, you need full access to the entire engine, and so that's when you get a from source build. So that's actually from GitHub. That is the full, completely, every single file you need to run that engine. However, understand too, if you're running as a team, you're going to have that entire engine and project. Same for you, same for me. So it's a little bit more heavy, but again, you've got a lot more control and functionality of that from using a source build. But for this one, we're just using Marketplace because there's really nothing fancy that we're doing that would require us to have a from source build. So.
Okay, didn't know that they called it from source. I just figured it was either the launcher version or the GitHub version. But
yeah, that's what we call it, is a source build versus Marketplace build.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, same exact thing.
Gotcha.
Cool. And then for this one as well, I've got quite a robust library here, so I'm not going to maximize
You've been going after all them free content, haven't you?
Yeah. The other thing too, which is really cool, I think I'm still surprised that people don't know this, but anything you buy off the Unreal Marketplace, you can use for commercial. You don't have to give any rights, you don't have to give any credit to the author. You can change it, you can modify it, you can put it in content that you get paid for. That is the license agreement that extends outside of that. Yeah, in fact, actually, if you read the EULA, you can actually download these from the Unreal Marketplace, extract the FBX file, and use them in Unity.
Did that change? Because I thought it wasn't, maybe the Paragon assets in particular.
Paragon is different. Anything that Epic's authored has to be with Unreal Engine. But, for example, because we create content in RStudio 2, you can download it, extract the FBXs, extract the textures, put them in Unity. You're totally with your rights to do that.
Life hacks.
Yes. Yep. So for this one, I just downloaded a couple, like this Polygon City Pack. This is a really good one that I'll show you guys as well that we're using, which is just a prototype pack. This is part of what we'll do in the layout. So we're going to be using Marketplace stuff that's free. Well, some of it was free. It's not anymore.
Maybe you'll fit the bill for stuff that wasn't right.
Sure. Just for me.
Oh.
So when you have this, it's pretty easy to do. So I've already set up the project. If you just do, I'm going to type this, is what we're using. You can click that Add to Project on any of that content that you purchase from there. You click the project that you want, and it will download it for you into the content folder appropriately. Now, you'll notice too, so let me go ahead and minimize this. So over here, you can see this is where that Polygon prototype is. The way that you have to author your content as a content creator requires you to put them in these subfolders. So just know that when you add it, it adds it to your content folder in your project under its own separate folder. But it's that easy. So you can purchase the content or get it for free, click Add to Project, and add it to there. Cool. Okay. So yes, that's what I've done. I just added a couple packs here. So our blocking starter pack, our Polygon prototype, and our Polygon town. So that's it. Other than that, this is just the third-person blueprint template, so it should be pretty self-explanatory. Any questions so far on that guy? No? Okay, cool. So yeah, so after that point, which you saw me where I was going to create a project, I would say create where the directory is. It would close that window. It would take a second, and then it would launch the editor. So that's what this is. Now, with this process, I'm going to try to show the core fundamentals, but I have preset some maps, so I'm just not doing everything from scratch and save us some time. So, cool. Okay. So the first part that I would need to do once the engine is loaded, in fact, actually, I'll show you what it kind of what it ships with. So using that third-person example map, this is what we get. One thing too that I think is something a lot of people don't understand, especially when you're starting out. Feel free to like copy some of this content. Feel free to like push and pull parts and pieces. So like in our third person here, we've got a light. Our light map support and volume, post-processing, sky, all these things. Feel free to just select those, copy paste them, create them in your new map. Nothing to say that you can't pilfer, steal from what you already have. The reason why we use this third person one, so if I just click play in viewport, you'll see I've already got all my controls set up to be able to move around as a third person character. So it's great, saves me some time, super simple. And again, I could just select this guy, I could just copy paste him to a new level. So on and so forth. So that is our starting level. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to actually just start from scratch and show kind of that process. So to do that, I can go into my content browser and let me know if you guys can't see that. I think I can make it a little bit bigger. So there's two ways to do this. I can go add new, and I can create a new level, or I can just right click in here and click add level, in which it'll give me one. I'm not going to do anything with this. It's blank. Like I said, I've already done this, so we'll go ahead and open that. So this is our starting level, and you can see there's absolutely nothing in it, which is great. But we still do have our third-person controls, so that's pretty good to do. So the first process that I want to do before, actually, I'm sorry. Let me jump and show you what we're actually going to be building here. So this is the final map that we're building. Set all within hopefully about 45 minutes to show you, but little audio, nothing super fancy, but it's a level. You can play around it. Yeah. All right, cool. Okay, so I'll jump back. So I'm going to go ahead and start in my starting map, and there's a couple things that I want to add from start, and this is simply just going to help me better lay out my level, see everything that I need to do. So I'm going to go over into this modes panel on the left, and first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create, actually, I can type in just post. If I can type post processing volume, I'll drag this. I will also add a directional light, so this will give us some kind of context. I'm also going to add a skylight and this BP sky sphere. So you can see immediately with the sky sphere, it kind of adds something that's really nice. Okay, so what all did we just add there, Ryan? I know we kind of blew through that. So to explain a little bit, let me put in, we'll put in our guy Manny, so we can kind of see here. So there's Manny. So this BP sky sphere is what you see in the backdrop. So it's kind of clouds. It's something that ships in the engine. It's super nice because it gives us some sky color, some clouds. Very, very nice. It's really easy. Great to start with. This directional light, so I'm actually going to change this guy to movable, so he's casting dynamic light. You can see as I move it, the shadows update on Manny in real time. So that just going to give us something to light it. I'll come back to post-processing volume. A skylight, so if I hide this directional light, with a skylight, I'm going to do SLS captured scene, set it to movable. You can see that it adds kind of that nice, rich ambient. It's actually capturing this entire scene. So let me go ahead and just go full screen so you can see. So it's capturing everything that's in my scene and then just reprojecting as kind of an ambient light. So those are the two lighting types that you'll want, regardless, directional light and skylight. Those are also supported on mobile. I think you should have rich lighting.
Raise hands to ask
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you change because it looks like it's on a sunset?
Yep, so that's a good question, great segue. So I'll show you, there's actually two ways to do this. So if I select my BP sky sphere, I can go in here and I can change, see where it says here, colors determined by sun position. But our sun position right now is at this height. So if I can manually select this, and you see it's kind of got a nice little like time of day look. I'll go kind of slow. So there's night. So you can manually slide it, or you can also use this directional light actor. So I'll go back into this view, and I will select our directional light. So now the sun corresponds with the direction of our light.
Oh, so
That's
you
what
can
it
just
is.
move that around and then
Yep.
change the.
Yep, exactly. So I can come in here and I can shift this guy, move him. So it's kind of more of a sunset. I'll go back to my VP Skysphere and click refresh material, and now you can see it matches direction and light. So very, very simple, very, very easy. Same thing with our captured scene. Should be fine. It should be updating it, and now we get those kind of rich, nice little colors of the sunset. Cool. The last one that I want to talk about too is a post-processing volume. Now this is, I can go kind of deep in this. Are you guys familiar with what a post-processing volume is? A little bit, not so much. Okay, cool. So a post-processing volume has a bunch of different controls for controlling your final image. We've got things like depth of field, bloom, exposure, lens flares, image effects, so on and so forth. You should always have a post-processing volume, no matter what. One of the things that I do, let me see if I can get this to actually respond. I'm going to try to get like a really bright spot. I know I'm zooming on his chest, but one of the things that you guys have probably seen this in Engine, see how the blue, I know this might be kind of difficult, do you see how it's kind of automatically going bright, and then dark, and then bright again, and then dark. So that is the automatic exposure compensation. Now you can turn that off in the viewport. That doesn't really affect your final game. So inside of your post-processing volume, you can actually set this min and max brightness. So currently right now, the virtual camera that you're viewing from is analyzing how bright are the pixels, how dark are the pixels, and it's trying to match and get something that's balanced, if that makes sense. So we can actually control that through this post-processing volume. Now, you may notice that if I say, I set these to like -10, -10, it doesn't do anything. The reason for that is a post-processing volume by default is only affected when you're inside of that volume. So we could take this, oh, that's really difficult to see. Let me
Are
hide this
you
real
the
quick.
camera or are you the objects inside the volume?
The virtual camera. So yeah, whatever your player view is. So you can see here in this post-processing volume, I've set it to -10, -10. If I go inside of there, see how I just also got like super bright, but then I go
what
outside
they do
of it.
for like water. If you want to make a
Exactly.
jump in the water, you can make it all blue.
Yep. In fact, actually, I could show you real fast on that. So let me just reset these.
That's actually one thing I did for Game Jam. Like 90% was underwater, and we just cranked the blue high, and as long as the camera was inside the post-process, it looked like they were underwater, even though there was no water there at all.
Yeah.
That's
So
a
like,
trick.
for example, I just tinted this blue. So as I go inside of it, super, super blue.
So like, yeah, you want that.
Mhm.
That's cool.
But here's the thing, so post-processing volumes, you can stack them. So you can do multiples and have different areas. This comes in handy too if you have, say for example, an open world and you go into a cave. Well, you don't want this massive ramping up and down. So you can put a post-processing volume in your cave to make everything just a little bit brighter. When you go outside, a little bit darker. That's one way to do it. The other thing is on here, I can set this post-processing volume underneath. Let me go ahead and just disable these so we don't see those. I can go under at the very bottom here, infinite extent unbound. So if I check that, this will now affect everything. So it's as if that box is now just fills the entire world. So you can see here if I change my temp, it's always going to be that way no matter where I'm at. That is the post-processing volume. Again, you can layer these things. I know from my typical workflow, sometimes I'll have two post-processing volumes. One that I call a neutralizer, so the one that neutralizes my scene, which I'll show you in a second, and then one that applies effects over time. So I can control the effects without affecting my underlying hand. No, this is neutral. So, all right, cool. So what I want to do with this post-processing volume, just for my setup, is min brightness 1, max brightness 1. So now I know that it's not going to do, if I show my Skysphere, my colors don't change. So this will come in handy later too, is when we get to the lighting section. But this is a good way to just, okay, I'm flat, I'm neutral, everything's good, good to go. Another one you guys may want to change, and I'll show this real quick, is under ambient occlusion. Intensity is fine, but radius is huge. I don't know why they always set it to 200. I recommend about 20, so that'll give us a little bit better contact, not super, super broad. All right, cool. So I think that covers. Oh, another thing that you guys may want to do as well. By default, over here, you don't see show engine content, but it is there. If you go down to your content browser and under view options, show engine content, it'll pop up these two little folders. I'm going to click this guy right here, and I'm going to type in SM color. This is SM color calibrator. Now again, I don't know where everybody's at in terms of, you may not be a lighting artist, you may not be, level or whatnot, but this guy comes in super handy because this is a typical kind of color chart rendition of color. So this is a great way to go in and find out whether or not, and you'll see when we do this in the lighting, clearly my lights are too bright because that white is pure white. And what this is supposed to be kind of a dark gray, not so much. So from that I can just go in here and let's say I'll crank this down to 5. Maybe I'll take my skylight, take him down to 0.2, whatnot, or maybe drop this even further. You can see as I start to affect it, it's an easy way for me to tell if I'm still happy. Yeah.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, so again, if you just go under, which you won't see it by default, if you do view options, show engine content, click your engine content, and then just type in SM color, and it'll pop up this SM color calibrator.
That cool Rubik's Cube.
Yeah, I know, right?
Well, these are actually, if you're familiar with like photography and film stuff, this is actually a standard color checker. So it uses the exact same hex values and ranges that you would find on the larger cards that typically make sure everything's calibrated. So.
I had a question on something you went over earlier.
Yeah.
You drop the skylight in and you can't change a couple things on it, I think.
Yeah.
Are those, because when you did the AO, you had always set it to 20. Are there any hard and fast rules for the skylight if you drop it any level?
You're talking this guy where we've got the, if I hide my directional light, this kind of ambient occlusion, this ambient light.
Yeah.
That one. So typically, intensity scale always comes in at 1. I always find that to be a little too hot. I'll usually set it to 0.5. Now, one thing that you do have to be careful of when using the SLS captured scene is that it is going to capture what's ever in your map. So if you've got a sky sphere, which in this case we do, so there's some information there, we have a light, that's going to translate very well when it captures it. However, if, say for example, I'm finding on this guy, let me go ahead and crank this up so it's a little bit easier to see. So this is at level 2, which actually looks really damn good. That was a happy accident. But if you notice, Manny by himself, if I go into unlit mode, you can see he's more of a gray color. But when I have my skylight captured with the reflection, it's like super pink and blue. It may be overdone for what I need. So one thing you can change is under the source type to SLS specific cube map. And from this, I recommend, I'm not sponsored by them, so it's a shameless plug for them, but HDRI Haven has a bunch of free HDRs. In fact, actually, well, no, I won't. We've covered that before. But you can drop your own cube map in there. And so that way, you can do something that's more neutralized or maybe not as colorized, which comes in very, very handy. I can answer that question on that one. Cool. Okay. Actually, it does look really good. But anyways, okay. So that is kind of just our initial setup. And again, this is, I haven't done anything in terms of our layout or blocking or anything. This is purely just to make sure I can see what the hell it is that I'm doing, and it's not going to be too crazy. Okay. Any questions on that stuff so far? Cool. Okay. So let's move on to the blocking phase. I want to save this. Okay. So for this scene, obviously we had color in the ratio. This one I just have our directional light pretty high, so it's kind of noon. So our sky is kind of the same way. I believe the only thing I was missing in here is the post-processing volume, but not like a super huge deal because we can work with it. Okay, how many of you guys are familiar with prefabs or creating blueprints for prefabs? Okay, cool. So with blueprints, they're awesome. Blueprints in a nutshell are just containers, which is great because you can do a lot of powerful things. What I'm going to show you guys in this one is really more of just a using it. Feel free to grab a seat anywhere, totally fine. I would not sit behind me because that's just going to be creepy. It would be over my shoulder. But with blueprints, all we're going to do is just use them for kind of an easy layout of sorts. So let me see. And we've got our lights, skylight. Okay, cool. So like I said before too, so I'm gonna show you guys with this one. Part of what I'm using for this is this Polygon prototype, which has just a bunch of different meshes. So if I'll show these, you guys might be able to see. I would highly recommend either having your own library that you can use from, or absolutely this pack is worth every penny for it. There's all different kinds of like cubes, blocks, triangles. Most of the content that ships actually has some demo maps. In fact, actually, let me jump over real quick and I'll show you just this demo. And I'll kind of show you this. This goes back to my original comment about pilfering stuff that's in there. So this is actually what the developer put together when he shipped all of it, which is great. So you know, I can go and he's like, oh cool, yeah, I could definitely use a ladder and an escape. I'll copy that. This, Control C just to copy it. Go back to my map and paste it. So again, absolutely feel free to pilfer, feel free to use stuff. It's great. This is just block out, so this isn't final. We're just trying to test to make sure our idea works. So you can see this pack again worth every penny. I think it's got a lot of cool different things. So this is what we'll primarily be using for our block outs. So I'll jump back.
I have a question. Would you ever recommend using? I've used it a few times, and it sometimes doesn't work out, sometimes it does. The architectural stuff, and that's embedded in the starter content. What's your thoughts on?
In terms of like, what do you mean? Just like
quick lockouts? I mean,
yeah, absolutely. I think that's totally fine. My recommendation is whatever you use for your blockouts, just make sure it's got enough variations in there that you can do stuff. Cubes. I don't know if you guys have seen this. They're usually not published a lot. They're more like behind the scenes. But every game goes through a stage. It's called gray boxing blockout, where the entire level is literally just gray boxes everywhere. And you'll kind of see why, but that's just to quickly test an idea like, oh, this doesn't work. Well, it's easier to move a block than to say, you know, hey, I know you spent 3 weeks on that asset. Do you mind just like cutting it in half and redoing it? So gray boxing is much, much easier for our prototypes. So that's kind of what we're doing this one. One thing I do like about this pack, are you guys familiar with like Master Materials, World Aligned versus non-World Aligned? A little bit? Okay, so I'll show you with, let me just pull this guy off and I'll show you. This guy uses a World Aligned material, which means this grid, if I scale this box, do you notice how the material scales with it? Like it doesn't actually change. It's not like the grid is increasing or decreasing. This is great because one of the things you'll find, especially in prototyping, is the grid is nice. It gives you context. It gives you, you know, if you're running on a flat open, like, hey, am I running fast? Am I running slow? I don't know. But if things are moving, like the grid, that's great. So this is partly why I chose this pack and why I like using it for blockout is partially because of that. Because I can scale this guy up massive, and if I go and play, you can see that grid gives me context now. Oh, I'm actually running pretty fast, or what's that size? So, and those are pretty easy to create. I mean, this is just a checkered pattern and world aligned, so super easy. Okay, so we'll move on to this one, which is again, this is using blueprints at probably the most basic level possible. There's so many more things you could do. In fact, to give you guys an idea with blueprints, I could actually take these individual pieces, but create some logic for it that says, oh, I want a curve. Oh no, I want a curve that has, like you'll see here, with this guy with the drain, or maybe I want a light pole. I could have one blueprint with controls where I can just drag and it would change all those. So again, that's way outside of what we're talking about here. But to create a blueprint prefab, so I can go in fact, actually I'll go to my 4 view. I will select everything that's over here. Deselect. So I've got these pieces. You can go up under blueprints and you can do convert selected components to blueprint class. So if I click that, now I've already created it. I would put in this blockout BPs. You can give a name for it, and what we get from that is this guy. So there we go. So there's our blueprint. That's it. It's that simple. And you can see the different components that are here that make up the blueprint with a shared root. Okay, so why go this route? Why not just select these, copy, paste it? The primary reason for that is as I start getting into my blockout, I can go, oh, I want this curve. Okay, that's pretty good. I'll duplicate him, move him, select, duplicate. Okay, there we go. I've got a little bit of those. I'm gonna take the one that has my drain. I am absolutely not lining these guys up, but I think you guys get the point. It's way easier for me to drop in these guys to do my blockouts, right? So I can go and I'm gonna rotate this. Maybe there's like a little bump in the road. There we go. So all using those blueprints. The cool part about this as well is, let's say for example that in my original, I dorked something up, right? Let's say that this, this piece was lower. I'm like, oh crap, right? I could go individually select, or because I use this blueprint, so I'll see if I can get this to show. I'll go ahead and open this guy. So I'll edit that blueprint, move him out of the way, go back here. So in my blueprint, I'll do this, I'll select this curve. See as I move one in the blueprint, it moves everywhere else. Great for prototyping. So that's essentially what I've done with this setup over here, is I've just created 3 variations for our blockout. So one has just the curves, one has curves and a lamp, and then one has drains on both sides for our street. And then I can go through, and then we'll just start laying out, which, to kind of show you that process, any questions on the blueprints?
Can you type in the blueprint to where it like randomly generates a way or something like that?
Okay, so that goes back to what I was saying before. So inside of this blueprint, I can go in and create a construction script, and I can actually target these things. But now you're talking about, I can take this guy, so this is our static mesh component. I'll just do material, like set material, back off of here. So this is where you start getting into that logic. But you have to do this blueprint scripting to be able to get that functionality. So again, that's why I was saying a little bit more advanced in that aspect.
Or buy a pack and it's all done for you.
Right, and some packs do, some packs don't. You'll find that a lot of times they don't, because that's a lot of logic for, well, man, I could go deep on that one. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not. It really just depends. Sometimes you've got developers that go completely overboard, and they give you like the all-encompassing one blueprint to rule them all, and it is horrible on performance. You don't want to use it, because it'll just tank everywhere.
Can you add to this blueprint now while you're like that?
What do you mean? Yeah, absolutely. In fact, actually, I'll show you. So let me do this. I'm gonna grab these guys. Let me see actually if I can find. We'll navigate. It's hard to do on tiny screens. Let's say, for example, that I'll just do something that's really hideous so we can see exactly what's going on. I'll just take this guy. So I can drag him into here as well. Okay, so there we go. So yeah, you can update these blueprints at any point, compile, save it, and there you go.
Honestly, you could spend days and weeks just in the viewport playing around. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm. So again, like I kept saying, this is absolutely using blueprints at the most basic level, but it is great for prototyping because again, it's much easier than me trying to when I have a bunch of stuff populated, select, or maybe go into my ortho views, try to select it. Oops, I accidentally selected my BP Skysphere. Now I have 7 BP Skyspheres. Oh shit, So. One thing I will say though, and this is probably more of a note in terms of your folder structure, I highly recommend not just slamming everything together in one folder. Create a folder in particular, as I've found through production, called Blockout. That's great, because it's easy just to delete all that stuff at the end, like we shouldn't have any Blockout stuff in the level. Delete it, oh, looks like it's still something existing. So, and then inside of there, BPs, that's actually just a naming convention that's very standard to Unreal for blueprints. Cool. All right, so really the standpoint from here, where would it come in terms of our blockout? So if I continue this guy, but let's say that I want to place him with, there we go. I'll show you what I just did here in a second. I'll duplicate this guy. I'm simply just holding down Alt while I drag. That's duplicate. I can select one of these, right click on what I just duplicated, replace selected actor with. You can select from a drop down, or because I have it selected in my content browser, I'll just immediately replace it there. Okay, so go through this process, maybe add a couple, and then really at this point it's just a matter of jumping in. So I can right click anywhere and just say play from here, jump my character, look at my scale, okay, this looks pretty good, maybe the streak's too long, whatever, okay, that's actually not looking too bad. I'm gonna go back to my polygon prototype. Here's another little trick that you guys may not know about. You can select any one of the root folders, and if you have any of these filters on, which I just have this static mesh, and I click static mesh, it will source anything that's inside of this entire folder right here and pull up all of my meshes. So they can be spread out across multiple subfolders, but everything will pop up here. Just a fun little trick. So I'll come back in here, and let's say, for example, that I'm going to create a building over here. So I'll go in, I'll scale this guy up, move him here. I'll take a look. Maybe there was a nice doorway. Okay, maybe this guy will work. Come here. Maybe it's too small. We'll scale him up. Yada yada. I think you guys are kind of getting the point. I don't want to break this too much, but this is really just that process and block out. Work for a little bit. Oop. Here we go, walk up to it, okay. Oops, that's probably too small. And you just go back and forth between laying it out, seeing how it feels, and going. Something to keep in mind too, and I mentioned this, dropping in the Manny character, that's actually what his name is called from Epic, it's Manny the Mannequin, is really good because that is the regular player's height. One trap that's really bad, and I can speak from experience on this one, is if you start going in and start laying out your blocks like, hey, this level looks totally kick-ass, and you go to play and you realize you're doing it like a tenth the size, you're like, oh shit. The downside right now is there's no way to globally scale everything together from a central pivot point. It scales from its own pivot point. So if I scale this, you see how it starts breaking apart everything? The only way around that is to actually convert all this stuff to a single blueprint and scale the blueprint. So don't do that. So definitely from the start, put in your Manny guy, and again, you can right click, play from here, jump in, see how it works, and kind of go from there.
Yeah, I've had a few times where I'm blocking out a level and got the doors in, got the frame in and everything. I'm like, oh good, everything is coming out good. Pull Manny out and you can't get to the door. I'm like, no.
Yep. Yep. Okay, and really the only last point is in the upper right of your viewport, this is that maximize and restore viewport. Some people don't know that, but that's the way that you can easily get into this quad view, which is great. So that's easier to select things, move things, so you can see where I've got these two pieces. In my perspective, clearly I'm not aligned. It's easy to do it in the side viewport and align. Cool. Any questions? Nope. Pretty self-explanatory. Cool. Okay. So now what we're going to do is jump ahead to our lighting. So I'm not going to save these guys. Go here. Cool. Blank level. No, not really. I just removed all the lighting from it. So I'm going to go into unlit mode and show you guys kind of the process that I'll walk through. So you can see we've got, to explain the block out, so what I've done here is I've just added some of these like really big mountains in the background. Oh yes, they're floating. So that's totally fine. It's great on performance because, from the ground level, the character may not ever see them. I've added some of these, are blocks. I've added some of those windows together on top. Now for this one, I did another little method that you can do as well. Instead of creating a blueprint, I just grouped them. So if you have a collection of meshes or assets or something like that, you can press Control-G, or you can right-click and you can click Group, and it'll say Group. Now, if you notice that when I select it, it selects the entire group. Let's say, for example, I needed to adjust this window, but I can't. If you right-click on the group, and instead of saying Ungroup, because we want to keep it in its group, you just do Unlock. This is actually hails from kind of old 3ds Max terminology. So when it's unlocked, you'll notice that the kind of the bounding box for it turned to red. That means now I can go inside the group, I can select my individual mesh and move it. Now when I'm done, I can just right click on it again, groups, and I can do lock. I'll go back to green, and now it selects the whole thing.
You could have clicked outside of that group and it would remember that it's an unlocked group.
Yes. Yeah, so for example, I can unlock this one, groups, unlock. I can go and select another group, green, so it's locked, go back here, it's red, I can select that mesh. And it'll stay unlocked as long as you have it there. We'll go ahead and lock that again. And that was literally this entire process. So, I went through, I had some of my groups, some of my prefabs, and I simply just laid them out, went through, played it, got my character perspective, and that's kind of the final level. Again, there's really nothing fancy that we haven't covered here. Nothing outside of just place assets, test it, place assets, and continue from there. Now with lighting, this is where, like I was saying too, this is why I removed all the lighting, because I'll show you kind of how I approach this process. So let me go back in, and I did keep in the BP Skysphere just because that's in there, and our post-processing volume, but I'll cover this just because it's way easier just to explain what I did. So I'm going to go back over into my modes panel, and I'm going to get a directional light. Yay, we can finally see. So from here, I'll just kind of move it, shape it. You notice how it's kind of snapping to my angles, not so fun. You can turn that off by just clicking any one of these. So this is our grid snap for moving. This is our grid snap for, I guess I should say our angle snap, and this is our scale snap. So if I turn this off, you'll see that it's a lot more fluid. So I'll typically try to find something from the player's perspective that's appealing, something that highlights the, if you guys aren't familiar with kind of traditional lighting and like classical lighting and stuff, it's light and shadows. That's what gives you form, right? Like if you've probably seen it where you've got a light that's just clearly on your face and you look kind of like you got a flat face, versus if you have a light from the side, you get this nice shadow, like, ooh, I see the shapes. It's the same principle that I use when I go to lighting.
Can you do the 3-point lighting thing in Unreal, or is that kind of stupid?
No, I'm kidding. Yeah, absolutely. You can put as many lights as you want in here.
Well, I know like when you do the 3D rendering, you always like have 2 lights and one above, or like a 3-point light.
Yeah, in fact, actually, I would say nowadays, I'm an artist by trade, either use Marmoset or use Unreal, because it's a real-time lighting engine.
Yeah.
So go in there, put your point lights, do your controls. Yeah, absolutely. In fact, actually, one of the character artists that works for us, that's what he does all his renders in, is Unreal.
Yeah.
So, so I will make a note, I do have the exposure set here. Min is 0.8, max is 2, just so you guys know. Ideally, I want to have a neutral one, but I'm just explaining how we get there. Does that make sense? I don't want to confuse you guys. At least it's not going super, super bright or super, super dark. So, okay, so with our directional light, I don't know if you guys can see that, this lovely preview. What that means is there are essentially 3 types of lighting, or 3 conditions of lighting in Unreal. And if I click this directional light, you can see we've got static, maybe. My mouse is freaking out. We have static, stationary, and movable. With static lighting, this is purely 100% baked lighting. So this will give you the nice, really rich contact AO shadows. It's beautiful, but it has to be rendered in post. And what I mean by that is you actually have to click under your build, you have to go into build, build lighting, and you have to build it. And that's what will bake that lighting. The flip side of that is when it's set to movable, you notice now that this little arrow lighting needs to be rebuilt, goes away. That's because this light is now 100% dynamic. You have to be careful with this. Mobile platforms, you can't have too many. In fact, you can only have about 1 to 4 dynamic lights, depends on the type. But in this case, because it's on PC, that's totally fine. This is my primary light source. I'm fine with it being dynamic. So if I actually go in here and play, you can see that I've got that real-time cast shadow from the character. If I come back, and let me take this guy, set him to static, and play, you should notice, oh, well it does. Anyways, just trust me when I say it's not supposed to do. I think the sky's going with that one. But with it being set to static, you have to bake the lighting. Now, there is kind of one caveat here with it actually affecting real time. Once you bake your lighting, you actually get these little, you can preview it, and I don't have it in here, but if you go under, I believe it's under show, visualize, light, volumetric light map. So what a volumetric light map does is it stores basically little points in a 3D grid. So you've got just a bunch of these floating points, are little light information. So they say, oh, where's the light coming from? What's the intensity of my shadow? Am I not shadowed? So it kind of casts this faux light as the character moves through that. Now, granted, if it's a really dense one, it's very expensive, costs a lot of texture memory, but you get really, really fine details. You can scale it up, and you get more broad context. That was actually implemented back. Did you guys ever play Paragon? A little bit, okay. So they actually highlighted this in a tech feature. You can read more about it. But that actually came across from, they wanted this really rich lighting when the characters went into dark areas. They still wanted some of that lighting to be cast, but of course, because it was cross-platform, you couldn't have that with PlayStation. You couldn't have all that dynamic lighting. So the volumetric light map is what does that. So runs in real time. If you guys have questions, I can explain that a little bit later. But just know that when you're using that, it comes from your static lighting. So with static lighting, the beautiful part about it is I can put all different kinds of lights in here. So, let's just say, for example, I've got this guy. I'll go back over here. Maybe I'll add a point light. I'll put him here, right? And then I'll move him maybe over to here, here, and here. One thing to note, I'm actually working in stationary as I go. Then I'll come back here to static. So all of this lighting can actually be baked down into a single light map and have no real-time lighting run performance at all, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, 'cause you just bake it on there.
It's all baked. Yep.
I had a question on that.
Yeah.
I was trying to understand what you're saying about volumetric light mapping. You were saying like you lay down a static light, it builds this 3D grid,
Yeah.
maintains that light info, and then if you have a character run past the light source, it's still going to affect the character's
Correct.
materials.
Let me see
So
this.
then it's not entirely baked in there, right? It has to be in the.
No, so each one of those, and let me just let this go real fast so it'll be easier to show.
It's more like baking the shadows.
Kind of. So imagine it's got these little tiny spheres. Have you ever seen like the render balls, like the chrome ball and the 50% gray ball? So essentially, these 50% gray balls, and what it does is it stores information. Where do I have light coming from? It's like little mini cube maps, more or less, or little HDRIs.
Isn't that similar to a reflection capture?
Exactly. It's exactly what it is. So each one of these little captures there have that information stored in them. So when the character passes through, that little bit, and it's super, super light, passes that lighting information onto the character. So
if you didn't drop a reflection capture in your map, does that mean the character is not going to respond to static lights?
no, so what you're talking about with reflection captures is different. And I'll actually show that here in a second. Okay, so this is horribly crappy lighting, but I think you guys can kind of see
That's
it.
rough.
It is what it is. There's ways we can mitigate this, but what I want to show you is this visualized volumetric light map. Okay. There you go. So you can see each one of these has that little reflection of, or a little bit of information. So if I go into like the shadowed area, of course this actually built above. We really need a light mass propagation volume. But you can see that it's remembering where that light's coming from. So as the character moves through that, he will inherit that light. Does that make
Does
sense?
this get heavier with the addition of static lights?
No, that's what I'm saying. Like all this is kind of built in. So this is something you can use. This is actually a good example too. So if I use this sphere, you can see I've got that little bounce reflection that's coming up. That would actually show, that would be pushed to the character. Make sense? Okay. Now, one thing to note, you notice how the spheres stop right above? The reason for that is when you do your baked lighting, if you go over to your modes panel, you need this light mass importance volume. This is very, very critical. This tells the engine where to bake light. So I'm going to actually increase this so we can see.
Keeps you from having to bake the entire world.
Correct. If you notice that I didn't have one of these, and the engine for somehow thought this was where it needed to stop. I don't understand why, but typically it does a pretty good job on automatic, but the way we fix that is we do this light mass importance volume. So I'll just take this down real quick. Let me just build it again real fast. This should be much quicker because it's not going to calculate the whole world. And I'll run the character through here as well so you can kind of see how it affects them. Does that make sense with the volumetric light map?
It does, yeah.
Okay.
It's the same principle as reflection capture, except for it's on a regular grid.
Yep.
And it's there by, automatically.
Right, yeah, and it's literally just casting that lighting information, light and shadows onto the character. Now, what you were talking about, your other one with reflection captures, yes, you do need those to reflect onto like metallic surfaces, and I'll explain that here in a second too once this updates.
Once it doesn't freeze.
Mm-hmm. Compiling. But with your reflection captures, you would want to place those into the world, so that way it is looking around going, okay, where do I capture these? Very, very old school with like cube mapping. When you want to reflect it, it's the exact same principle. Okay, so that worked a little bit better. Let me run the character real quick and hopefully this will... Okay, like that's a good example. So you see how I'm kind of getting that cast orange light from him?
Yeah.
That is purely coming from this volumetric light map. I have no light reflection captures in here, and I don't have any dynamic lighting whatsoever. So this is all just baked lighting, but in these dark areas, he's actually getting that light information being cast. So it's pretty cool. Again, that is just purely with baked lights, not dynamic lights. So let me go back here. I'll change this guy, set it back to movable. Let's go ahead and delete our point lights. Another fun little trick here too. If you notice, I still have my baked lighting, which is a pain. If you ever want to get rid of that, all you need to do is go into your world settings, and if you scroll down, underneath light mask settings, expand it, and then expand this little roll up right here. Force no pre-computed lighting. Just check it. Yes, ignore it. Go to build lighting. Boom. Now it's gone. So now all of that baked lighting is wiped.
You're not going to get the red text message.
Correct. Well, the only reason why I'm not getting the red text message is because I changed my directional light to movable. As soon as I change it to static, lighting needs to be rebuilt. Okay. All right, sweet. Okay, let's keep going on. So this is kind of my first light. I'll go ahead and duplicate this guy. Kind of going back to what you were saying about the 3-point lighting. So for him, I may take him kind of in the opposite direction, take his luminosity maybe to like 2, and now I've kind of got this faux bounce lighting. Again, this is all completely dynamic, and I'll show you guys performance in a little bit, but now I've kind of got this simulated lighting, which actually doesn't look half bad, to be honest with you. But I do have these kind of dark spots that are actually way more darker. I'm sure you guys can probably guess how we would solve that by simply dropping in a skylight. So I'll drop in my skylight, and immediately remove him. Let's see. So immediately we start to get that kind of nice little fill. I do have it set on SLS captured scene, so we can kind of see how that's going. And that's not bad. I mean, it's not great, but just by simply doing 2 directional lights and a skylight, I have a world that actually looks fairly nice. And I'm also running at, I know this one is, I'm running at 290 frames a second. So I'd say that's probably acceptable. Cool, okay. And then really the only other things that I would probably go in and drop is, let's do atmospheric fog. Just do something like this, just to give it just a little bit. You can see here, it kind of gives me just a little bit of atmosphere. I'll leave it at default. Nothing super fancy, but it's kind of nice. You guys may be tempted as well to add this exponential height fog, which I will say is
Pretty cool.
absolutely beautiful. Take my fog density, let's take it up to like 0.8. So you can see it actually gives me some of this nice depth to it. So as I get closer, things start to, but it is very expensive, so it comes at a cost. So just be very careful with that when you use it. You can see already, just by adding the exponential height fog, we've lost about 80 frames a second. So it can get expensive.
Wow, I didn't realize it was that expensive.
It's very expensive. There's also some really cool things you can do with it, with like volumetric light fog, which again gets even a little bit more expensive. But with our directional light, I think it should be on by default now, but there is a way that you can actually have light transmission. Now this one I think, because it doesn't, we can get some of those really nice kind of God rays and blooms. Again, absolutely beautiful, but it's horrible on performance. So
Who cares when it looks good, right?
yeah. So just ignore that I said that. Just don't even use them. No, I mean you can, but again, it gets very expensive. So okay. So let me see. I think that covers most of what I needed. Oh, and then really the other final part here. This really comes into play when we start using our post-processing volume. So like I said before too, this is super great. There's multiple ways you can handle post-processing volume, even taking it into Photoshop, making the adjustments and importing a little bit of data for that. That's one way. I'm not going to show you that way because that just would take too long. But just know that you can pretty much do everything inside of the engine, from color grading to post-processing to tinting to contrast, everything. If I disable this, so I'll just click enable, you'll kind of see what we've done here. Let me frame this up a little bit. So re-enable it, disable it, re-enable it. So what I've changed in here is I've just bumped up my contrast a little bit. So it gives me just a little bit better contrast over the scene for mobile. This actually comes into play with the VR stuff where I kind of pulled this saturation. So one of the things that I've done here is, we can desaturate it, very noir, kind of cool. I can come in here and really crank up the colors. That's a great method for kind of your post. Again, I would recommend, if there's anything I can say, is on your post-processing volume, save it to the end, to the very, very end. Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to start battling and correcting things prematurely. What I mean by that is, say for example, these are the final authored assets or whatever, and I come back to the artist and say, hey, your character's like it's way too desaturated, oversaturated. Then I start pushing saturation, and then I'm trying to balance everything else. Then you start just chasing yourself in a circle, which is really bad. So again, if you remember why I said I typically like to work with 2 post-processing volumes, this can be my effect. The other one could be my neutral, so I can come in here, disable this, and go, check my scene. Okay, cool. Hey, colors are fine. We're good. Nothing's blown out. Then I got to know it's my post-processing volume here that I need to fix. So really all I've done here is just boost up the saturation. Gamma was a little bit of a correction just to kind of make things not so dark. I think that's a great way. I could come in here as well to say like my shadows. I could do my gain, click here. If you notice that they kind of get darker or they get lighter, I could even come in and tint them a little bit, so they actually get more yellow. Maybe I want them more blue. You can see there's a lot of features you can do. I mean, this is absolutely cinematic, film level, color grading, all different kinds of stuff. We've got things with brightness, bloom, depth of field, chromatic aberration. I'm sure you guys have seen this. This is a fun one. Ooh, the drunk effect. So a lot of things that you can do with it, which is great. Any questions on that?
Is there a way to just change the shadowing on a certain area? Because when you did the slider, it does all the shadows.
Correct, because if this post-processing volume itself is set to the infinite extent
Oh,
on
right,
that.
that's right, because you made it.
Mhm.
Right. So you can
Yep.
just make a new one in this kind of thing, like a cyberpunk area, and you want like
Exactly.
different light.
Yep. So with that, you could set. Now, if I remember correctly, too, with post-processing volume, this actually also goes for reflection captures. Is smaller ones have higher priority over bigger ones. Now, granted, you can go in here. If you see under this post-processing volume settings priority, you can manually select that. But if you have a global post-processing volume and you create a small one, like you were saying in an example where there's like an alleyway, because it's smaller by default, it takes priority and precedence over the big one. So you could go ahead and set it in there, but if it's not, just know you just go down here to this priority setting and just bump it up higher.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So, are you able to change the overall post-processing volume? Like from being just a square?
No, unfortunately not. Right now, really post-processing volumes are only square.
So then that also brings up the question, if you have 2 crossing over each other, what happens?
Never cross the street.
Like in that scenario, is it double the effect?
Never.
Or is it the same?
So most of what it will do is it not necessarily double effect. So say one's got a higher exposure than another, it'll just inherit the higher exposure. It won't add them
But
together.
if they both have like the same exact settings?
Oh, if they had
Like
both the
say if
settings.
you wanted to with the water example, the
Yeah.
water's not a box. You want to fill out the edges.
So one of the things you have here as well is blend radius and blend weight. So you can actually feather it. So as you get close to it, I could show it, but it's probably self-explanatory. You can have it where as you start to go into it, it starts to get there. So for example, a cave, right? It's not going to be an immediate hard effect,
Yeah.
but you can set it inside the cave, have this gap and another one, and have that one set to feather. So as you get close, it slowly
Kind of
starts
blends
to
it
ramp
into
up.
it.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, but unfortunately, there's no way to do like a custom.
Shape.
Yeah, that's something that's been requested for quite a while, but I don't know if there's a way they're going to do that. I think you can do this with like some C++ stuff, but don't count me that I really know what I'm talking about on that. So, okay. And then really the other thing, and I know you'd mentioned this one too, is just adding your reflection captures. This is a very important thing. I'm going to skip over box and planar because those are kind of special use cases. The one you'll use the most, which is the cheapest, is your sphere reflection capture. And really the way to lay these out is something about player height, because that will be where it captures. By default, it's captured scene, but if you remember when we did our skylight, I can actually specify a cube map, a specific cube map for this. Usually situations where you'll find that come in handy is if reflection captures are capturing maybe too much color information or something, you can actually manually just capture that HDR sphere, reapply it, or take it into Photoshop, desaturate it a little bit, and reapply it back so you have a very specific type of reflection capture. But simply just drag them into your scene. I'll duplicate one here, and then I'll duplicate one as well over here. If you notice their radiuses are quite large, so we'll capture everything kind of within that volume. Not necessarily a bad thing, it's not just going to capture the backside of things per se, but just be aware that you probably don't need it as big as it is. So I'll do that, and then this one as well. I'll show you this trick that I use. So I'll take this guy. This guy's going to be my whole scene reflection capture. So I'm just going to fill him up to as big as the world as I can get it. That way just everything gets included with reflection capture from it. Now, something to note here too, let me actually get our SM color checker real fast so you can kind of see what's happening. Okay. So right now, I really don't have a lot of information on those reflection ones, and that's because my reflection captures aren't built. These are super cheap and very easy to build. So if you click your build drop down, if you actually click the button, it goes through everything that's in this list. So just be aware of that. But if you click the little drop down to do build reflection captures, it now build those reflection captures, which probably a little bit easier to see in this guy right here. Let me see, I'll show you as well. They do actually contribute some lighting. So if I crank this guy up, you can kind of see his contribution to that reflection. So again, it's kind of like simulated lighting. Use it with caution. 1 is usually the maximum you'd want to go. If you're pushing it higher than that, it might indicate something's wrong. But 1, I typically use mine about 0.25 is what I find is pretty good, because most of my global lighting that I have, so my directional light, my skylight, typically fills in everything that I need. But reflection captures, and this is the big note, only really apply to reflective surfaces. There's really no point. If you notice, most of our surfaces here are matte. So if I adjust this brightness, you notice it doesn't really do anything, because that reflection capture is just applying itself in reflective and metallic surfaces. But they are important to have, and again, the general rule of thumb with reflection captures, set them at eye level of the character, because obviously you don't want capture and reflection 500 units above the character. You're like, why am I looking at the sky on this reflective box? All right, cool. Any questions? Yeah.
A small point about the post-process. I just checked. I didn't have the answer either, but there's a brush shape option on the post-process volume, so you can change it to something else.
Let me double check, because I know that there was, I think I know what you're talking about on brush. Ooh, yay, you can change it. Yeah, so with brush shape, this is where you can do cube builder, curve stair builder, cylinder. I think though, no, I think this is the caveat with it, because the only shapes you can have, you cannot have a concave shape. So if you imagine a sphere with a dent in it, that dent will be filled in all the way around. So if you look at all the defaults, you've got a cone, cube, curved stair, cylinder, linear. All those things can be convex. So yeah, I don't think, there might be a way to do it, but we'll just say that maybe there's a way for right now, and we'll just keep it at that. But there might be a way. But yeah, I do know that you can't do like special custom concave, because the engine doesn't handle concave that way. All right, cool. So I think that covers everything on lighting. Any questions you guys have on lighting?
I did have one question. Sometimes I have an issue with when it comes to, I know we're doing a day scene here, but when it comes to doing a night scene, now if you want to get like the power of a night sky, but you don't want, do you want a directional light in a scene that's got night in it to kind of make those stars pop a little bit more? Because I've actually tried to turn the sun upside down, it gleams through the street. So
oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
In fact,
Never
actually,
really found a fix for that.
we might actually have some time. I'll show you real quick what I would do. Let me turn this skylight off. Let me change this guy. So I'm going to delete our secondary directional light. So for him, I'm actually just going to use a temperature. Okay, hold on just a second. We're set to movable. I'm going to disable our post-processing real quick just to see. Shouldn't be affecting. Yeah, okay. So directional light skylight is, oh, that's why, because he was still affected. This is something that it corks me. Toggling off your skylight like this doesn't actually hide it. You have to click effects world. But for whatever reason, if you do a light and you toggle it, it does turn it off. So I'm gonna go back to my.
That's a minor oversight.
Yeah. So I'm gonna change him and say like 6.
You don't see the icon though, that's what it's really after.
Yeah. I don't know why this is a little weird. But typically for like nighttime, oh, I do know why. Let's just turn them off right now. All right. But typically for nighttime, like you'll have kind of a bluish purpley tint to it. This is weird. Okay. Oh, it might be because it's competing with the. Yeah, that's why. Because it's an orange, so orange and blue is going to give me a different color. But you can see here that I'll kind of just tint the light a little bit, and you have to be careful with this. But give yourself just like a little bit of like kind of night light.
Okay.
Inside the, and then in your skylight, this is where you can actually go in and get a nighttime cube map. But if I just do my scene, let's just say it's effect world, and then there should be a recapture. Yeah, this is probably really bad with the fact that I've got color in there, but you can lower it. So effectively, you're kind of using this light as moonlight.
Okay.
It's kind of like a bluishy purpley tint, and then you'll still want to do some ambience. If you just do like Google search Pixar does a great job with lighting night scenes. A lot of animated stuff do, but just analyze one of those scenes, and you'll see that they usually have that moonlight. Like, oh, it's a spotlight. It's just a little bit dim, but it's still bright. And then the reflection that they have may be something that's a little bit more bounced to give a little bit more warmth.
Okay.
So, yeah, same exact principles that you would normally use. Cool. Okay. So let's move on then now to the final bit, which is this is kind of our scene with everything populated now. I added some little audio cues in it just to help fill it out. So if I do play from here, so here we go. So he runs around. I can check my level. It's great. Of course, I have no weapons. It's an absolutely boring game. Don't buy it. It'll be free. But you can see there's all the principles kind of collectively brought together in the end. So we blocked it out. We got our spacing. I've lit it. At this point, if it plays well, like, hey, this is cool. This entire scene took me maybe 4 or 5 hours. So, from start to finish to do everything. So I had something that's presentable. I can show this as a demo, whatnot. It sells off like, hey, this is really cool. I like it. Good to go. Green light pass. Now, really the next step in the production process is just telling your artist, whoever it is, hey, make me a building that's this size. Put windows kind of where it's at, and you're done. So all your information is there, makes things super, super solid, but that is the block out phasing for everything to present a prototype. You've got the game, you can tell what you have. So hopefully that's the power behind that makes sense, and it's super easy. So again, all this was marketplace asset content. Everything was done in Engine. I didn't use any DCC apps, so no 3ds Max, no Maya. This is all just built in Engine. Done all the post-processing, all the lighting directly in Engine as well.
Could we see one of the block? We started with showing a road being built with these 3 or 6 static meshes, something like that. Could we see the BPs that you've been using to build the city? Just in a sense, like the scale of building blocks you're using.
Well, like so like for example, just do, I think it's H. Oh no, come on. I think it's visibility. Yeah. So like for example, that's all I did with this one. So it could be a blueprint. I just did a group on this one, but like that's one of my buildings. Show all. So I used kind of that building. I did a building here and a building here. So like these 5 little ones, and then I duplicated them and flipped them. And then I
Cheater.
duplicated them again, and then just took one of those and shifted them out. And then I created these kind of bigger buildings and scaled them up, placed them all around. I cheated a lot.
When
A
you
lot of
scale a
cheating.
group, do they scale from the common origin or individual origin?
I think with this one, yeah, you can see that it does it individually. So, yeah, I didn't actually scale any of them. Yeah, but if you do notice, same building, just but from the ground level, it's like a shorter building. Trickery.
Gotta love what you can't see, right?
Yeah. Oh, exactly. These look like really tall mountains, but don't go up any higher. Maybe the whole point of the new is going to be running on the ground, so it was a good walkout.
So, is there a way to take the like the geometry that you have there and export it so that it has
Yes.
that direct comparison?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. So you can select the whole scene, or you can select individuals. So let's say for example, I need somebody to model this. Effectively, I'm just going to call it hero asset. So it's very, very specific. It's not modular. It's like I need this. Let me see. Visibility show only selected. That was a bad selection job, but you get the point. Like if this was the road I needed, I can select all these, right click, and then I can do, where am I going? Hold on, it's here. Weird. There is a way to do this. Why is that not showing up? Let's look at this group, hold on. Okay, normally it was in the right click. This is 422.3, so it's weird. Anyways, you can select it, go up to File, and you can do Export Selected. And right there, you can see it's exporting as an FBX file. And of course, that can be used across all different kinds of Blender.
Was that option always in the file, or did it used to be right click?
There used to be a right-click option where you could do Export,
Yeah.
but again, I don't know why it's not there
That's
anymore.
gonna bug me.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, file, export selected, and then yeah, you can do that. In fact, actually, that's something we do in production quite a bit. Once we get approval on a block out or everything looks great, that's where we'll go in and find out. Okay, hey, I know I need this building size, and it's perfect for artists. Not that I'm saying artists are dumb, but it really helps to mitigate a lot of issues with one artist working in centimeters and one working in meters. And you're like, hey, your building is this tall. Oops. So, yeah, you can absolutely export stuff out from there. Cool. So really the last bit, and this should wrap us up. Actually, this took a little bit longer than I thought. Really the last phase of testing is really just your profiling and stats. How many of you guys are familiar with stats and kind of using them a little bit? Okay. So there's a couple that I'll do now. If you remember, let me reset it back. Max, CPS. So in your editor preferences, you can actually do show performance. If you notice at the top, it's just flickering between 120 and 119. By default, the engine is locked at 120 frames a second. So if you get more than that, it's not going to show. It's going to be stuck at 120. If you press the tilde key, so that's just right below the escape key, and you just type in t.max FPS, and then space, and you can put in whatever number you want. This is where I'll put like 600. So you can see our actual true frame performance is 250 frames a second. So that's pretty good. Now granted, if you've done anything in game development, you know that frames per second is this lucrative number that absolutely means nothing, to be honest. Because really to get to FPS is a lot of different factors. Sometimes you have CPU bottleneck. So you could have the most kicking ass graphics card, but an Intel Pentium 2 processor. You're like, well, I'm only getting like 20 frames a second. It's a CPU lock. So that's why you want to use stats and profiling. The first one I'm going to show you is Control, Shift, and comma is the hotkey, and that is this GPU visualizer. You can also get it to it from, I think, Window Developer Tools, and I think it's under here. It's under one of these. But what this does is this takes a snapshot. As soon as you press that comma key, it has captured a snapshot of the frame performance on here. So in here you can see, and this is why I said that frames per second really means nothing. This shows me my frame time. So this is my GPU frame time. So if I look in here, I can see my entire scene takes basically 2.7 milliseconds of frame time. What that correlates to is if you want about 90 frames a second of performance, you need to keep it under 11 milliseconds of frame time. It's an inverse relation is the way that works. So the higher your frame time goes, the lower your frames per second. So in here I can just kind of debug this. This is why I said too, and I'll show you this example. So these are all of my different paths. So this is my my light grid. This is HZB, I think is for, this is all my mip mapping. There's shadows information that's passed. A base pass is usually like your geometry and things like that. That gets rendered again. This is super low. You can see base pass is 0.14 milliseconds. That's awesome. Did great. Directional lighting, you can see, is a little bit more expensive. Now, again, looking at all this, it's relative. This is still 2.1, 2.8 milliseconds of frame time. It's super, super sweet. Now, if we do the thing that I said not to do, which was add in, let's say, atmospheric fog, exponential height fog. So I'll add this guy in there. Let's say I crank him up to like
Silent Hill type
really
stuff.
high. Yeah, so, so something that's super nice. I can see here I've dropped to about, I've lost about 30 frames a second. So using that same Control-Shift-Comma to open this up, you can see a little bit. My scene has actually gone up, not substantially, but now I should have in here post-processing. It should be somewhere, I think, hidden in here. But is that exponential height fog now? So again, that's an easy way for me just to go through. Again, why I recommend profiling, find out, okay, are there bottlenecks somewhere? You may find that, holy shit, my light maps are taking up, or they're taking like 8 milliseconds of frame time. Oh, it's because I've cranked them up so high that I've got, 30 4K texture maps for my light maps. So that's an easy way just to fix that problem. The next thing you can do, you can show any of these stats that I'm typing. If you just go under this little drop down here, stat, these are all the different, so these are like the advanced ones, all the things you can see.
Just a few.
Yeah, there's quite a bit. The ones I usually like to do, and I'm just going to type in the console command, which again is tilde, is stat unit, type it again, stat FPS. This is one, I like it, it's very lightweight, it's not obtrusive, maybe it's hard to see. But this tells me a little bit more about what's happening behind the scenes. So, I can see here 300 frames a second, roughly 3 milliseconds of frame time. My game time, which is my CPU thread, 3 milliseconds. My draw time is about 1.8. My GPU is about 3 milliseconds as well. So, tells me a lot what's going on. RHIT is actually for real-time ray tracing. Because I'm using 423, it's in there, but I don't have it activated. So that will be the profiling now. I'll show you another one as well, which would be stat. You can do it under engine, advanced, there's GPU. Again, you can click on these by console commands. A little bit more in depth, so you kind of saw it with that GPU, but that's more of a breakdown of, hey, what's happening behind the scenes. Is anything abnormally high? If it is, what kind of thing. So. That covers essentially that whole process of block out to the point where it's ready for finalization, getting your final assets and really tweaking out performance. But again, all this stuff took maybe 4 hours to do. That concludes the presentation. Actually, no, if you guys have any questions about it, that's pretty much it.
We're kind of a part 2 to the night question, which is indoor lighting.
Yes.
You're doing an indoor scene that has no windows and no doors, no way for light to get in from the outside.
Mhm.
How do you like that? Because I've run into this problem where it's like I stick a light in there and it's really bright there, and it's, do I have to increase the balances, or is it something like that? Some standard way of getting sort of this general ambient light level realistic in a room.
Yeah, so one way you can do that is actually put a skylight in there instead of captured scene. Do like an ambient cube map or a HDRI that's similar to that, but just kind of barely bump it up.
That intensity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like if I'll show this because I'll disable these guys here. That's kind of this effect that you're getting here. So this skylight, that's what's casting my light. Now granted, this is just the scene, but yeah, for example, if I go into here, like 0.2, 0.3, 0.5, 1. That's all just kind of that ambient light in there. Yeah. And there are a lot of tricks. In fact, actually, I've considered doing. There's a lot of tutorials out there how to do exterior lighting, but not a lot for interior. But there's some things you can do as well. Like you can have a directional light, but instead of having a really short fall off, so you're like bumping the intensity, it's really bright here and not here. There are ways that you can actually throw that light further, so it's more uniform here and then to here as well.
Yeah, that's kind of what I ended up doing. I felt like it was a hack or something because really that light wouldn't be touching over there, but it, you know, it's convincing.
Yeah, you're what's the word I'm looking for? Your hardcore truists that are going to be like, well, light doesn't respond that way.
Yeah.
It's games. I mean, you simulate it, you affect it because one of the things we don't have is eye adaptation. You have it in game, but sometimes your eye may respond differently. It's absolutely okay to hack it. The thing is really knowing why you're hacking and what you're hacking. So, for example, you're just like, oh, I know I've got a moonlight in here, but the scene is really dark. I'm just going to bump up my ambience. That's totally fine. That would make sense because maybe your eye might adapt to that after 20 minutes of sitting in the dark. Totally fine.
Sorry, I was just doing some lens flare there. I didn't quite see what it did.
Yeah.
Some J.J. Abrams going on.
Yeah. Cool. What else? Any other questions?
I'll have one while I'm driving.
Yeah, there you go.
I should ask that.
Great shameless plug. Yeah, if you guys do have questions on Discord, because I'm on that too. If you think of questions, you've got comments you would make, feel free to post there too. Cool. Okay. Well, that concludes it. So we've got about another 20 minutes. You guys can hang around, talk for a little bit, do whatever. It's totally fine. I'll put this up on there as well. With the there should be a post. I'll get it up here, but there's a post meetup survey. There it is, right there. With the post meetup survey, if you guys don't mind filling out, I'll get you in a second. With the post meetup survey, if you guys don't mind filling it out, just let me know how it is. If there are topics you want to cover, anything else that you guys want to see, I appreciate that.
Is that link going to be in Discord? Or?
Yeah, I can leave that up. That one is a permanent one. You see it's bit.ly.kcu Doug's. Yeah, I'll post those into Discord.
I have a question. Is anyone here allergic to peanut butter?
No.
No? No? Okay, good. I'm eating something with peanut butter and I don't want to have someone die on me.
That's considerate.
That is very
You have to be highly sensitive.
It's happened. Happened
Unless he's
before.
like going all,
Airborne.
he's gonna start like flicking.
Yeah.
Yeah, last thing we need is a...
I mean, like, restaurants have gotten sued because
peanut
somebody happened to be in the same room as Peanuts.
Unless he's like
and they
crushing
got
his own peanuts and making his own
Yeah.
organic peanut butter.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, they have to have a sign that says, this might contain peanuts. There's actually
Just on the restaurant.
no. There was actually a restaurant in Columbia. It doesn't exist anymore, but it was like a bakery, and literally the name of the restaurant was "May Contain Nuts."
That's awesome. That is
It's like,
awesome.
I'll let you guys know too. So this was live stream. I don't know if you guys know it was an option. So typically I like having everybody show up. It's nice to see faces because I don't want to sit here by myself.
People are real.
Yeah.
You be that weird guy.
But it is recorded, so I'll put it up. We do have our YouTube channel for the Unreal Dev Meetup, so this will be posted there. So if you guys want to watch it again, if you missed anything, that'll be up there. So we'll do that.